Welcome back. In this video I want to show you how to make a snail cam, and we do it using construction lines, circles, and arcs. And obviously you can change the dimensions to whatever you want them to be, but remember the general rule is that it should be between 1 and 2 inches the size of your cam that you are making. And making a snail cam can be a little bit tedious. Let's go ahead and go to File, New, Standard Part. It can be a little tedious, but it's actually relatively simple. Once you see the steps that go into it, you hopefully will see why we need them. Let's go ahead and start a new sketch, click on the XY plane. And let's start with, we'll turn on our construction lines and click on our circle tool. Let's go ahead and draw our circle, tell our first one to be 1 inch. Let's draw a second one that's concentric with it, so at the same point in our origin, and tell it to be 2 inches in diameter. And then I'm going to turn off my construction lines. It's very important that I turn off my construction lines when I need to and turn them on when I need to as well, because construction lines allow us to construct our image without messing with the sketch that we want to extrude. It's very important. What I want to do is I want to use my line tool and tell it to connect from the top of each of my circles. And again, this line should not be in construction lines. You'll notice that it stays vertical. You might have accidentally drawn yours at an angle. If you did, go ahead and click on it and it'll tell it, or with the vertical constraint tool, I should say, click on it. And it will automatically tell it to be vertical if it didn't. If it already is vertical, then that's good. But I want to use this vertical constraints tool to line this line up with the center of our circle. So I'm going to click on this bottom point and tell it to line up with the center of our circles, which should fully constrain our line. And now we're going to start using our arc tools to make this get smaller and smaller and smaller as we get to the center. We're going to do that with construction lines of more circles. So I should say, I guess, construction circles. Turn our construction line tool again and click on our circle tool, and we're going to make a slightly smaller circle than our biggest one. Let's tell it to be 1.75 inches in diameter. And now I'm going to turn off my construction lines and click on my arc tool. And I'm going to tell it to be coincident with the top of our line, and I'm going to connect it 90 degrees off of this circle onto the next one. And it's very important that you don't connect it to the circle that you're starting from, but to the next smallest one. That's kind of the whole point here. Just gets gradually smaller. And I'm just going to click. Now, it says 2 dimensions needed, so we can change how far away these points are, how far away this arc is from from the next one, how many points on our arc, I should say. It would also, we can tell it to, or we can change the size of this arc, so you can see the arc can get bigger, and it can also slide up and down. We don't want it to do either one, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my horizontal constraint. I'm going to tell this point that I drew to line up with the center of our circle. So now this point has to be 90 degrees from that point, and that's kind of the point. See what I did there? But then I'm also going to tell it to be tangent to the outer circle. So I'm going to click on my tangent tool. Let me highlight it so you can see what it is, where it is in your constraints list. But I'm going to click on this arc and this outer circle, and now they should be tangent together, and it should be fully constrained. And then we're going to repeat this process a few more times. Let's click on our circle tool and our construction lines. Let's go ahead and draw it out. And this time I'm going to go 1.5 inches in diameter. And you can see our circles are gradually getting smaller. And again, that's kind of the point. So I'm going to turn off my construction lines and grab my arc tool again. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go 90 degrees off of this point that I just created on the next circle down. And we'll draw that arc tool. And again, I want to lock this arc in place on my circle so that it's lining up directly below it this time. So 90 degrees off. So we'll go to our vertical constraint tool, and I'm going to click on the point of my circle, the center point of my circles, and the edge of my arc. That way it's locked in place. I can't slide it left or right now. I can only change the size of my arc, and I won't be able to do that once I add my tangent constraint. So I'm going to tangent my arc to the previous arc that I created. And that way it's just a smooth transition from arc to arc. So let's go ahead and do that again. And you might have caught on to the pattern. This time it's going to be 90 degrees off, but it's also going to be a little bit smaller, gradually smaller. So to keep it consistent, excuse me, let's tell it to be 1.25 inches. And this should have been a construction line. To turn it on a construction line, I'm just going to click on the circle and click on my construction line tool. And then I'll make sure construction lines are off for when I draw my arc. And we'll go ahead and connect it to the previous arc endpoint. and then go to the next small circle, and that might be a little confusing because there's quite a few to work with, but I want to make sure I go to the next smallest circle, the 1.25 inch diameter circle, and we're just going to connect it in. And again, I'm going to tell it to be horizontally constrained. I want it to be 90 degrees off the previous one, so I'm going to click on the endpoint and the center circle. So that's 90 degrees. And you might notice that's fully constrained. It looks like it's because I accidentally added a tangent tool when I drew it. So I'm going to actually redraw the arc here. I'm going to be very careful not to add any constraints as I draw the next one, as I connect it. And you'll see that tangent tool wants to pop up. I don't want it to because I don't want to accidentally tangent to the wrong arc. So I'm just going to draw it or a little bit off, and that's okay. And then I'm going to go to, again, my horizontal constraint. Click on the two dots that I want to be horizontally constrained. And then I want that tangent tool. I want this arc to be tangent to the previous arc, which again is the whole point, to give us that smooth transition. And it might have already been there the way I sketched it before, but might as well be safe. There's really no point in chancing it. And you might notice, well, the next small circle's already been drawn. So I'm going to just do my arc tool one more time, connect it to this point and that point, and I don't need to vertically constrain it because it already is, you might notice. So now I just need to add this tangent constraint to constrain it to the previous arc so that, again, it's a smooth transition. It gets gradually smaller as we go through our circle. Now, I'm going to draw a circle at the center, and this is going to be the first time it's not in construction lines because this is going to be the center for our axle, or where we put the axle, I should say. And of course, the standard is 3/16 of an inch right in the center, and we can finish our sketch and extrude it, and make sure you don't click on that center circle that we just sketched. And again, the standard for the extrusion is also 3/16, keeping it nice and simple. So now all we need to do is go ahead and add our two work planes that we need to use to work with. So we'll go to our plane, mid plane between two planes to give us one in the center to line it up with our follower. So click on the front and the back, and we should have a mid plane going right through the center. And then we need a second plane, a second work plane that goes through our center axle hole that we just created. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to plane, offset from plane, and open up our origin. And we'll find the one that goes through the center. It looks like it's our XY plane as usual. And of course, I want it to be 0 inches off. But again, before you do it, you should probably check to make sure it is going right through the center of that axle hole. It is. And again, yes, I want to leave it at 0 inches and just hit check. And there we go. We have our snail cam.